Welcome back to a Book a Day podcast, and I hope you've been really well. In the next few days or weeks, I'm going to discuss books on the monsoon. The monsoon, as probably all of you know, is a seasonal wind that blows from the south of India and travels north through the months of June and July, and they bring rains with them. And it's the kind of idea that geographically that really unites um, the whole of India, rather the Indian subcontinent. And because of this geographical phenomenon, a lot of cultural things have evolved over the centuries that have also united the region. You'll hear the romantic songs, they were written around this idea of rains and monsoons. You'll hear so much poetry, art, stories, all kind of things around the ideas of the monsoon. It is what truly brings romance to the Indian subcontinent. And today I'll start from something very ancient. We'll go back to the 5th century AD when Kalidasa, the great Sanskrit poet, he was there and he was writing some of his masterpieces. As we've already covered one of his works called Ritu Samhara, where he discussed different seasons of India and wrote poetry on that. So there also we covered the monsoon season, but this particular work called Meghaduta is specifically focused on the idea of the monsoon and how the clouds they travel from south to north in this season. In Sanskrit we call it Meghadutam, or in Hindi sometimes we call it Meghaduta, which literally translates to the cloud messenger. And as you find in other Kalidasa's work, or let's just say any Indian artwork, there's a lot of sensual description of nature. There is just this intimacy with nature, and that connection through vivid descriptions, through imagery. You feel that connection in his writings, and that's pretty much the case here. You feel that the whole scene is coming alive when you read Meghadutam. So what happens in this work? It's a very simple story. There is this protagonist Yaksha who kinds of embodies nature. I'll talk about it in a bit. How in the ancient Indian philosophy, how the natural elements they kind of personify, uh, and then we have characters based on them. So there is Yaksha who is living away from his wife because he has been exiled from his country by Lord Kuber, the god of wealth. He's been exiled for 1 year and he's living close to somewhere in the central India. He's living away from his wife. And then whole of the poem, this long poem, is about him talking to a cloud and sharing his emotions about his wife. That is, asking the cloud to take his message to his wife. And the wife who is somewhere in the Himalayas in the north of India. And this method, this indirect way of talking to your lover, it's also quite an interesting part of Indian culture, Indian philosophy, art. For example, there is this mention of indirect kiss in Kama Sutra, where you're not kissing the person you love, but let's just say that person is sitting in front of you or standing right there, but you can't really kiss them because of some reason. So what you do, you just look at them, and that person is also looking at you, and you kiss an object while looking at them, and that just uh, transfers the emotion. The emotion is same. It's a kiss, but it's not a direct one. And it's true for so many other things, that in poetry also you're not really saying the things directly. There's always an indirect way. And the same thing happens in a lot of Bollywood songs, even today, where the person is not directly addressing the beloved, but let's just say they're talking to the natural elements. They're talking to, say, wind, and asking the wind to carry the message, or they're talking to the moon, and then moon is supposed to bring that message or carry that message to the beloved. And so in this case, Yaksha is talking to the cloud, and the cloud is supposed to carry that message to his wife, to Yaksha's wife, that is. So a few things happen throughout this journey. First of all, um, Yaksha describes his situation, where he's coming from, the exile, he's living away, and then he sees the cloud, and then he starts talking to the cloud, and tells him about his journey, what's going to be there, how the travel is going from the center of India, from relatively speaking, from south to the north, what are the things that he's going to encounter, what kind of cultural experiences, what people will feel when the clouds come, when the rain happens, all those cultural experiences, different landscapes. It gives a really detailed explanation of India as it was back then. And then eventually he asks to convey the core message to Yaksha's wife. And it gets really emotional towards the end. So let me read a few verses, few passages from Meghadutam, of course, the English translation, and you'll find out more about the journey. So we'll start with the very beginning, where he's describing his own situation, Yaksha, and talks about his state of mind. So he goes, lovesick and engrossed with himself, neglectful of his duties, a Yaksha was deprived of his position and asked to live in exile, away from his wife and abode for a year. He came then to spend his days under a thick canopy of trees at Ramgiri Ashrama, where Janaki used to perform her ablutions in tanks and fountains once. So it's just giving you an idea that this is where he is, of course, referring himself to in third person. Then he continues, he says, one who could not live apart from her even for a moment, who had become so thin, pinning after his love. After that, his gold bangles came off his hands. That lover came to spend a few months there. But on the very first day of Ashada, that month, could he see a patch of clouds moving over the hill in front, as if an elephant were at play, stooping, butting against a hillock with his head. So that's how he describes himself. Then what he does is he addresses the cloud, starts talking to it, and he says, let me read from the passage. He says, dear, you are and a refuge to those afflicted with summer heat, as also love. Go therefore with a message from me to her, my love, who has been separated from me by the Lord of riches. Go to Alaka, the dwelling place of princely Yakshas. There the mansions remain lit by the crescent moon on Shiva's head in its outer garden. And then in his very unique, sensuous style, Kalidasa describes the women and the men, what they're doing, how they're experiencing the season. So he goes, as you ride upon the wind's path, women who have their husbands traveling abroad will look at you, holding up their tresses, hoping they may be coming. But for mine, who knows how I depend for a living on another, what man living far from his home would not be expected? Eager, my wife must be counting days, brother. Go unimpeded to her. She is still alive. Hope sustains the heart of a woman, for it is tender like a flower and full of love. And then just focus on the details that he provides on the journey that the cloud is going to undertake, and what the nature is like in this season. He says, go up in the sky with your face turned to the north. From this place, overgrown with canes, with the naive consorts of siddhas looking at you with wonder in their eyes, was a gale carrying away the mountain top? Flying so, you would push aside the thick, uplifted trunks of huge tuskers as you go north. There, above the ant hill, the rainbow fragment would look lovely, like a mixed lot of precious stones. And your dark body would charm the eye as if it was Krishna standing there, and his head was crowned with peacock feathers. So as you can see, a lot of references to classical Indian literature, Krishna, Rama, all those elements, they combine. And then he also talks about um, women, which Kalidasa does quite a lot and describes their emotions and beauty. In this case, he says, innocent peasant women will look up, curious, as products on their farms depend on your coming. There, in the Mala lands, you must reign as the soil is upturned with the plough, and one breathes the earth's smell. Go west hence, then turn to the north. So he's guiding the cloud, he's giving all the directions, he understands the geography, he understands the path of the monsoons, and then understands what happens in different places. And slowly, one by one, bit by bit, he describes all these things, this aerial view that the cloud is traveling in the sky, but at the same time, the view at the ground level, how in various places there are forests, then there are different cities, different cultures, and in some places people are farming, in some places people are experiencing something else. So it just gives a lot of details on the flora and fauna and all those details about people and their culture, and it just goes on for a long time. And then he guides and guides the cloud, and until that cloud reaches or supposed to reach the city of Yakshas, and that's where his wife Yakshini, she's going to be there. And let's just read now how he describes his wife. So he goes, there you'll find one quite young. She's spare of build with sharp pointed teeth, and lips red like a bimba fruit, thin in the middle, with eyes as those of a doe surprised. She has a deep navel and a gait slow on account of the weight of her hips. Maybe she stoops slightly because of her breasts. You may take her to be the first of the Maker's creation of her own kind. And I think this is where Kalidasa is at his best, when he's describing the physical beauty of women. Two things. One is nature, then the physical beauty of women, and also when it comes to describing the emotions. So these are some things where Kalidasa explains them so vividly, so beautifully, that you just get captivated by it. It's beautiful. All these descriptions, they're just wonderful. They just capture uh, how that beauty shifts, how those fine details they evolve in different emotions, in different circumstances. So, for example, in the subsequent passages, he goes, I think she may have her face resting on her hand, eyes swollen on account of continued weeping, with loose hair falling on that lovely face. It can only be seen in part. Her lower lips dimmed due to the hot breaths she may be exhaling, and her face looking without luster, overshadowed by misery, like the moon trailing behind your movements. So you see those fine details. What a beautiful painting is just creating there. Just all the details that you need, they're there, right there. And how wonderfully all the metaphors that are being used, they're so apt and beautiful. And then in the subsequent paragraphs, we find how he's asking the cloud to talk to her, reach out to her. That's also quite an interesting way of telling. He says, "O cloud, if she is asleep as you arrive, wait there for some time without thunder. She might be in a deep embrace with me in her dream. It would make her drop off her arms around my neck at once. If she does not open her eyes after sleeping a while, wake her, who is tender like blooming Maltese. With a gentle thud of your sound, withhold the flash of your lightning contained for some time. Make the thunder speak a few words to her, that noble one." And then the message begins, what is supposed to tell it to her. He says, "You will tell her, O fortunate one, I must tell you that a friend of your husband, I have come to tell you a message that I do stir the heart of even wayfarers with the sound of thunder, as they want to get back home to their wives and long to unravel the enmeshed single braided fall of their hair." Hearing this, she would turn to you and listen carefully, with an open heart, whatever you have to say, like Sita who listened to the son of the wind. For, O gentle one, to women tidings about their consorts are as good as actual union. And then he is supposed to deliver the final message that the husband, Yaksha, is safe and he's doing well, he's missing you, but he's okay, he's safe. He may not be able to meet you or be with you at this point, but he remembers you, he loves you. And the message, obviously, it goes on for a while. And I loved how it ends eventually. And the final few lines are also quite powerful and really poetic. The comparisons, the metaphors, they are so on point. It goes, "O dark-eyed lady, you should take it to be a proof that I am well, and you should not doubt my love because of hearsay. I do not know why people say love is lessened in separation. The desire for it, on the contrary, is heightened, accumulating into heaps of love. You should consider your friend who suffers because this is our first separation. You should come back from that mountain whose peaks have been dug up by Shiva's bull and pray for me too, the delicate thread of whose life is brittle. It hangs loosely like flowering kundas of the morning that can fall at the slightest touch." And then once again he thanks the cloud and makes this request that just deliver this message to my wife. And that's how eventually it ends. So you can see the beauty of poetry. You can see how wonderful, how rich it can be. And how that richness in language, it touches your emotions, and how it enhances those emotions, how it makes you experience them, experience the beauty and depth of all those experiences. And apart from the language, you also see the philosophy, underlying philosophy. One is obviously about love and separation, these consistent themes, um, spending time with nature, understanding nature, uh, the typical Kalidasa, all those elements are there. But what I find the most interesting is something that I mentioned earlier, the personification of natural elements, whether it's the yakshas, whether it's the cloud. So all those elements, it's something that's very unique about Indian philosophy. That in general, the kind of philosophy that we believe in today, we think that we human beings have consciousness and probably animals don't have it, or if animals have it, then the rest of the natural elements, they don't have it, the plants don't have it, clouds don't have it, earth doesn't have it, and in some way that makes us superior to the other natural elements. But that has not been the case in Indian philosophy. It's been suggested that somehow these clouds, they also have uh, a personality, maybe they also have uh, the same kind of consciousness. Maybe it's manifesting or expressing itself in a different way, but it's still there. So you'll find these conversations between different natural elements all the time. Somebody talking to river, river talking to clouds, somebody talking to moon. All of this has been part of Indian philosophy, and all these stories, they keep playing and playing in various Indian mythological stories. So that's something that I find really interesting, that in the modern society we may have come to believe that these elements, they do not have consciousness, but when you go back to these classics, these gems, it feels like people in those days, they really believed that all these natural elements, they also have certain consciousness, and that's how they try to personify them. That's something that makes you think and also brings you close to nature. It's a wonderful experience. So that's it for today. Meghadutam we discussed, and we'll move on to more books on the season of the monsoon in the next few episodes. I hope you'll stick around, you'll listen, you'll share your thoughts, and we'll explore more books together. Thank you very much for listening.